All right, so hello everyone. For those who are not viewing this live, welcome to our third Candid Talks with Grads session where we will be talking about imposter syndrome. I'm Ashley Ryan, the Student Wellness Coordinator at the Graduate Student Association, and I will be starting us off. So imposter syndrome. What exactly is imposter syndrome? Well, it can be defined as a psychological syndrome or pattern. It is based on intense secret feelings of fraudulence in the face of success and achievement. If you suffer from imposter syndrome, you believe that you don't deserve your success, you're a phony who has somehow gotten away with it. So what does imposter syndrome feel like? Well, one of the most common things would be that people doubt themselves when they have this. So for example, someone might say something along the lines of, I'm not smart enough to do this research. And, other people here, everyone's way smarter than me. I'm not really, I shouldn't be here. People may also experience, fear of being found out by others as a fake or phony, kind of like they're a living version of the imposter in the game Among Us, except in this case, they aren't actually an imposter, but they feel that way. It may also be hard for people to take credit for their own accomplishments. So for example, if someone gets a good grade in an assignment, they may kind of brush it off and say, you know what, it was just like just luck that I got that grade, instead of saying, hey, I put a lot of work into this, I deserve this grade. And also may feel people kind of experience, different forms of like frustration and worry and anxiety and sadness, depression, and they may straight up just feel like a failure. So looking at the context of graduate students, one of the important things to note about imposter syndrome is that experiencing it is actually very, very common. So if you're experiencing it as a grad student at UW, you definitely are not alone. I tried to search out for some statistics on actually how frequently it occurs amongst graduate students, or how common it really is. But I couldn't find any solid, consistent numbers on it. I imagine that it fluctuates probably greatly depending on who's being sampled, and it may be a hard phenomenon to study as well, since some people may not be as open to admitting it or be able to acknowledge hey, this is what I'm experiencing. But what I did see is that some research suggests that it can be as high as 70 to 80% of people that actually experience imposter syndrome. So as you imagine, if that is an accurate reflection, that's a lot of people that have to go through this experience. So part of the reason we may feel this way, particularly as graduate students, is because of the environment we're in. So in the context of UW, we're all in, one of the highest ranked schools in the country. We are constantly around people who we perceive are experts in their fields. We even have Nobel Prize winners at our institution. The reality is, us all here as graduate students, we're all just starting out at our fields. We aren't expected to know everything. We're here to learn. Graduate school can also sometimes feel like, kind of just being thrown in the deep end of a pool, in the sense which, may make people feel uncomfortable as we all try to navigate what's going on and learning all these new things. In this kind of environment, while there's so many people around us that are doing such great things and have such great ideas, we can be tricked into thinking that, everyone else is in this phenomena where they're able to do all these things, and for some reason you can't. But the reality is, many of us, as graduate students, experience this kind of imposter syndrome and feeling like we're not supposed to be there. And it's not only just students. In reality, staff members can experience this, faculty members, even tenured profs can sometimes feel like, oh, I feel like a fake, I'm not supposed to be here. So imposter syndrome may also create some mental obstacles for people as well. So according to the Center for Teaching Excellence at UW, it may make grads, less likely to want to present at a conference, or less likely to want to submit articles for publication because they feel that they aren't worthy. Those who are experiencing imposter syndrome may also not want to be a mentor to newer students or interact with peers or faculty members as much, since they feel like they shouldn't be in those roles of being a mentor. And as you can imagine, this kind of dynamic and the experiences of not wanting to do these things can create some forms of like isolation for students, which can play into some other mental health struggles as well. So Simran is going to take us through some helpful three-pronged strategy in her presentation, but I will also quickly provide some helpful tips from the Center for Teaching Excellence that I came across. The first being to speak out about your feelings. So especially with many people experiencing similar thoughts, it may be helpful to talk about it. And you'll have that opportunity today for those who are viewing this live. Another thing which I know is easier said than done is to separate feelings from fact. So knowing that although you may feel stupid, it does not mean that you are. So just to be able to feel like, hey, I feel like this in this moment, but that doesn't actually mean that I am this trait that I'm thinking. Next up is developing a new response to failure. So, learning from your mistakes and trying to move on from the mistakes instead of focusing on that and just having it carry with you throughout your degree, for example. Next is recognizing you don't always need to know the answer. So heck, to be honest, every year I am personally in grad school, I feel like I know less and less. But that doesn't mean I'm dumb. It just means I'm learning and exploring and realizing that there's so much information that is out there that I didn't even know was a thing. And I'm just constantly learning that. Like I'm not a computer. None of us are computers. We can't memorize all this information and be able to recall it all at the drop of a hat for everyone all the time. And next up is rewarding yourself. So recognize your accomplishments. Pat yourself on the back because you're doing a great job. Next up is to take chances. So not sure if you should go to a conference, throw that application in, and if you get accepted, you should totally go. It'll be worth it to take those kind of initiatives and take that chance if you're able to. And lastly, I would say, to remind yourself that you're here for a reason. You didn't get into your program just purely out of luck. You got in because multiple faculty and multiple admin members looked at your application, compared it against a bunch of other applications, and chose you for your qualification and your ideas. You deserve your spot in your program. You're not a fake, like you deserve to be here. And so to give a quick idea of some of the resources that may help for you if you're experiencing imposter syndrome. Of course, sometimes depending on your situation, not all of these may be a good resource. Like for example, if you don't have the best relationship with your supervisor, that might not be like the best option for you. But some options may be, like I said, if you have a good relationship with your supervisor, you can talk to your supervisor. Counselling Services is always there to help on campus. They also host what is called the Grad Student Community and Conversation Circle, which is kind of like an open conversation with other students that you can talk about whatever is on your mind. You can also go to resources that are held by the Center for Teaching Excellence, like they have some workshops. You can attend events like we are doing right now. You could approach us at the Graduate Student Association. And of course, friends, your peers, family members, whoever you can have the kind of that open conversation with. And Empower Me is also a useful resource. And if you would like any information about any of these resources, you can find them on the Campus Wellness website and also on the GSA website as well, or by contacting us and asking questions. All right, so that's it for me, and I'm going to hand things over to Simran.
Thanks so much, Ashley. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, I'm going to be sharing a PowerPoint, but I'm going to need you guys to let me know if it's showing you guys presenter view or the actual slideshow. Okay, so, oh. Okay, I'm going to try again because screen
Okay.
sharing is failing to start is the notification I'm getting.
Oh, that's odd.
Let's see here. Share. Oh, I think this is definitely presenter view.
I'm seeing presenter view, yeah.
Okay. Oh, now I'm not sure what you're seeing.
What you could do, what I find useful, is when you go to share screen, if you click under advanced, there's an option to share a portion of screen. And so you can have it open in presenter view and only be showing the slide portion, but you can still see everything on your end, if that helps.
Sure. I will try to do that. Sorry. Okay. Let's do it that way. So view, share screen. Okay, I'm just going to share my PowerPoint and look at my notes separately.
Sounds good.
So share. Okay. Okay, so I'm assuming you can see my first slide.
Yes, we can.
If I swipe like this, can you still see my slides?
Yes.
Can you see any? Okay, great. That sounds fine then. Okay, sorry for the slight technical difficulties. I will just get started. So yeah, today I'm going to be talking about imposter syndrome. So I already introduced myself, but I'll go again. So yeah, I'm Simran. I'm a master's candidate at Waterloo. And so with this talk, I have two major goals. So first, I want to talk about imposter feelings and how those change our thoughts and our actions. And second, I'm going to propose some strategies to combat thinking and acting like an imposter. So yeah, Ashley mentioned some of the things that imposter syndrome might manifest. And so a lot of this is like not taking opportunities, kind of staying understated because we don't feel like we necessarily deserve to be where we are. And so, yeah, we're going to work on some strategies to not feel that way or to at least act differently. So many of the things that I'm about to say will not necessarily be new or groundbreaking, but I'm a believer that sometimes you need to hear the same thing worded slightly differently for it to stick in your brain. So I'm hoping that for a few of you at least, I can say something helpful that sticks. So, okay. I'd like to look a little deeper into this word imposter. So the more important word in imposter syndrome is imposter, of course. And there's something about this word that resonates with all of us, right? This is why, despite all of our different backgrounds, our different roots to our feelings of anxiety or self-doubt, all of us once heard the term imposter syndrome for the first time, and something clicked, right? We heard it and we thought, that's what I must be, an imposter. I'm posing as someone that has the qualifications or knowledge, or that has the qualifications to be in the position that I'm in. And so, yeah, what makes this word resonant? A lot of us are under the impression that we are a certain way, and in order to be a different or better person, we must be faking and we must have to be imposters. And a lot of the time we fail to realize that maybe, you know, if we're so good at acting competent, if we're so good at fooling others into thinking we're competent, that we might just all actually be competent or qualified enough. And so to look at imposter syndrome, which is a term that's really only been around since the 80s, I use two tools. So first, Google Search Trends, and second, Google Books Ngram, to look up the term imposter syndrome. And the results on the slide right now show that this feeling of being a fraud or alone in our secret of our own incompetence resonates uniquely with people living now, people living in 2021, or really like the last decade. And this may be for various reasons, but a lot of it has to do with with us feeling alone or singular in our performance or act. We feel that we alone are defrauding the people around us. And when you know that many people are acting, we feel that we alone are acting, and everyone else is just pulling it off and is very smooth and capable. But really, as Ashley said, if 70% of people are experiencing imposter feelings, then it's impossible that we're alone, especially in grad school in our program. So when you know that many people are acting, that's fun now, right? Many people acting together. That's a play, or that's a whole production, which is weirdly more reflective of reality than our feeling of separation in our own imposter syndrome. So in order to talk about imposter syndrome, let's talk about specifically what that means in a lot of our lives. So the overarching term imposter syndrome is a bit of a catch-all. Actually, if you look on the internet, it's very difficult to find a uniform definition for it, but its effects are quite normal and can be manageable when you break it down. So anxiety, perfectionism, self-doubt, and fear of failure. These are the four main things that we experience. It's useful to know specifically what you feel, because one way to deal with imposter syndrome is to break it down into its parts and deal with the specific things you're feeling. And so now I'm going to take you through 3 strategies and approaches that deal with these 4 effects in different ways. So first, the people who don't deal with imposter syndrome are no more or less intelligent than you or I. The main difference is that non-imposters think and act differently than we do. So we're going to talk about our thoughts and actions and how we can manipulate those thoughts and actions to improve our lives in grad school and going forward. So first, in the thoughts category, it's really important to identify your specific value. So in grad school, your team can range from just your supervisor and yourself to like a team of like 20 people. But no matter what, you are bringing something specific to that team. Your supervisor didn't do you a favor by hiring you. The school isn't doing you a favor by accepting you. They saw, again, that you have some specific value, and they saw that in your application or during an interview. So identify this value. And I would encourage you to do this with a friend so that you can't, so that you're less likely to undervalue yourself. So yes, for me, I think this value is my experience in material science, my resourcefulness, and my ability to bring a team together. And so next, once we have these values in our mind, we're going to put these into action. So imposters often scramble to try to be good at everything, which is very difficult and causes a lot of strife. Whereas non-imposters recognize that they cannot be experts at everything, and they're fine with that. And so instead of overwhelming yourself, use your list of values to see where you can contribute effectively and where you can probably let something go. And so, depending on your situation, you can even try talking to your supervisor about where you think you'd be effective, and where, someone else on your team is actually more effective. And you can shift your focus to play to your strengths. And this in itself, just doing something that makes you feel like you're contributing with, in your own unique way, can be, incredibly rewarding, and can often combat, these feelings of self-doubt, because you know what your value is and you're acting on it. So now I'm going to move on to my second strategy. And this one is a bit fun, honestly. It's failing on purpose a little bit. And so this is going to be hard for a lot of us. But another big difference between people that deal with imposter syndrome and people that don't deal with imposter syndrome is our reaction to failure. And so we can feel a lot of shame around failure. And so it can help to first reframe your failures. We can deprogram our brains from this shame surrounding failure by practicing small scale failure regularly. So, for example, when you have a soft deadline and you anticipate you won't be able to fit it in with everything else scheduled that week, you can go ahead and tell your supervisor that I don't think I'm going to be able to get that done, and ask for an extension early. And so you can practice giving yourself slack in this way. Often when we make mistakes, we become obsessed with hiding them or going to extreme lengths to fix them so that we don't expose ourselves as incompetent. But something that has helped me during grad school is my group has weekly meetings in which we update each other and the professors on like what we got done this week. And I've started saying regularly, like, I did these 3 tasks. However, on this 4th one, I struggled, or I underestimated how long everything else would take. And so this 4th one I was not even able to start it this week. And basically embracing these like small modes of failure of like, I couldn't do that this week, and admitting to them gives you this freedom from that anxiety that surrounds failure. It gives you freedom from the shame that you're trying so hard to avoid. And sorry about that. And it makes you feel a little more settled and a little less like you can be exposed. Okay. So, of course, whenever something bad happens, I suddenly have a lot of time to ruminate and identify with the mistake and the shame that I feel. We all suddenly have all the time in the world to wonder, how am I going to face my peers? How embarrassing? How am I going to move on from, this mistake that I made? But oftentimes, our glorious moments when we succeed at something, or when we realize why we're doing what we're doing, or when a difficult concept finally clicks for us. In these moments, we tend to rebound very quickly and return to, our mundane tasks. And we don't savor that feeling or internalize that we caused the success and we caused this victory, at the very least in some part. And so the last strategy is to consciously give yourself credit. And most people with imposter syndrome are not going to do this accidentally. And so really the key is to make time to do this on purpose. So not just when you remember, but daily or weekly. Savor the feeling of having done something this week. How hard is it to do something? It's so hard. It's so hard to do anything at all. And so when you do, savor it. Also, the imposter syndrome is a very inward-looking phenomenon. We're constantly thinking about what we think are our overwhelming failures, but also how many people struggle with the imposter syndrome. 70%, right? 70% of all people. And so I encourage you to sometimes consciously shift your focus outward. So recognize what people around you are doing right. And I would say you don't have to wait for big moments. Let your praise for others be free flowing and constant. Not only will this one distract you from your own self-doubt, which can be a huge relief sometimes, it humanizes other people when you pay them attention, which is really what we're struggling with. We can see that we are human beings that are sometimes sad and small, and we have bodies, but we dehumanize others by thinking they are uniquely qualified or more deserving than us, and that they're not struggling like us, or that they are not pretending a little, which, I mean, again, 70% of all people, almost all of them are, right? And so I would like to end on a brief message from me to you, because I can also feel how overwhelming imposter syndrome can be. And so I'd like to say specific, brilliant creativity or genius is often overrated, and we don't need to expect that of ourselves. We love to think of, you know, the one person that had the idea or solved the problem or invented something that, you know, changed the world, because that's often how we pass stories along. But most of what all of us are doing here in grad school is either honestly being paid very little or paying money ourselves to be here. And so really all we need to do is show up most days, you know, do a little bit of thinking and make a little bit of progress and just keep doing that. Yeah, and I would say we don't need to expect ourselves to have some grand inspiration or motivation. And that really, you know, all of you are ready to do what it is you need to do. Yeah, and that's everything. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I will stop the recording now.